Well, it's fun. I sit at the desk every once in a while, and this is the weird thing that happens at the desk. The fire department shows up all the time, and that's the real problem. Is how do you keep the fire department from showing up at Steve Spangler Science? I'm not sure, but it happens. And it actually did happen last week. An unrelated fire department shows up, and we have pictures of the fire department out in our parking lot setting off Mentos geysers. So thank goodness there wasn't a fire, because I think they would have been consumed setting off Mentos geysers versus doing something here. But that's just the nature of the business. I have the best job in the whole world because I get a chance to try to come up with creative ways to make science fun. And it's hard to believe that a science teacher from Englewood, Colorado, would get a chance to do a YouTube show and the resources to try to make science fun.
So tell me what fuels your passion for science, Steve.
There's probably it's probably multifaceted for the reason why we do what we do with science education right now. But we see what happens when kids don't have science. I talk to a lot of teachers, and so I have to take you back in the timeline. When I got out of college, I was going to teach full time, and went down that path. Started with a school district. Got a chance to do a little side venture with a little thing called NBC Television. They were working on a show called News for Kids. This was a time where they had to have educational programming on television for a certain number of hours a week. So I got to be the science guy on a program called News for Kids, and a pre-internet. So it was fun because you didn't know what the reach was necessarily, but the exciting thing that happened with that is I got a chance to do a lot of school programs. So after everything was said and done, I probably had 4,500 school programs under my belt over a 13-year period of time. So I got a chance to see, aside from my classroom, I got to see probably 800 to 1,000 other schools and classrooms and what kids were doing. And I think what fuels me and fueled me at the time and carries over is the fact that I saw science slowly becoming an extracurricular activity for kids. And that really motivated me to say, what is that all about? What's the difference between a good teacher and a great teacher? And moving forward, what would we have to change? Because if we continue doing the same things that we're doing now, we'll probably effectively eliminate science education at the elementary level. And all the hard research shows that if you don't grab them at the elementary level, the chances of them trying to catch up in middle school or high school are next to none. So it's probably form follows function. Make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. So tell me how that transformed into the Spangler effect. What are you trying to accomplish with that show in particular to achieve some of those goals you just talked about?
Well, the nice thing about it is that when Google YouTube came to us and said, if you could do a show, what would it look like? It was the same kind of pitch that we've probably done for the last 10 or 15 years that nobody really understood. The real television world didn't understand, and one of the reasons why they didn't understand it is because probably we weren't explaining it well, but more importantly, there wasn't a sense of interactiveness going on with that type of show. And that's exactly what this is. The shows over the years have had, the science shows over the years have had the same formula, dating back to Mr. Wizard, and even prior to Mr. Wizard, if you jump across the pond and take a look at what was going on in the UK and these educational films that were popping up and so forth, it was always, this is a person who is the disseminator of information, and everybody at home should sit there and watch and clap and be amazed. And a lot of them were like, don't try this at home. It didn't happen so much with the Mr. Wizard era because I think they wanted people to do it, but they didn't care if a kid had lighter fluid and this next thing and an old phonograph, that kind of weird stuff. When we hit, I guess, the age of responsibility, which happened to hit in the 1980s, maybe 1990s, there was a wonderful character by the name of Bill Nye that everybody knows, but every one of the shows started with "Don't try this at home." So that level of disengagement is absolutely counterintuitive to teaching hands-on science. And we didn't want that. So we wanted something where you could try this at home, but then you take it to the next level. So I might be able to try a science experiment at home using a can and some washers and a rubber band or whatever, but who would have ever thought that they would take that and make a 55-gallon drum and throw it down the street and all the other things. So there was an attainable piece, and then there was a piece that everybody has in the back of their mind that says, are they really going to do that? And that's kind of how the show was pitched and the show started.
So I think we'd all agree that obviously hands-on inquiry-based science is the way to go. Why do you think we have such a challenge with that in our schools today?
Well, I think that we have to dispel that myth that's out there, and that is that if it's hands-on, it's good. That's a myth. If it's hands-on, kids learn. That's a total myth. When we learn that with our dollars, we put millions of dollars of supplies into schools across the country. And the TIMSS test, Trends in International Math and Science, right, showed us that from 1993 to 2003, our fourth graders progressed 0%. And that was the age of put stuff in people's hands. So the secret, in my mind, isn't the secret wasn't put stuff in people's hands. And today, the secret can't be put stuff in people's hands. The secret today has to be teach teachers how to teach kids how to wonder and discover and explore and ask questions. We've kind of trademarked the idea in our minds of teaching the invisible. This is what we're doing when we're teaching science. We're teaching invisible qualities. We're not teaching memorization skills. We're not teaching content because I can go find the content online. That's not a teachable kind of thing. I have to teach kids how to think using science, how to become a scientist at a very early age. And that's a tough thing to teach. So hands-on is good, but hands-on is great when you've got a teacher who has been trained and teaching kids how to think and answer their own questions. Long answer, huh?
No, it was great, and I think we're aligned with that completely. You mentioned teaching the invisible, and there's probably nothing more invisible than the internet in a lot of ways, and we're seeing a lot of online science experiments kind of taken online, virtual science labs, virtual science projects, and so on. Do you think this can be an effective way to teaching science?
It can be. I mean, I don't think that Steve Spangler Science was a pioneer in the field, but I do think that we were part of the Wild West in about 2002 or 2003, because when we launched SteveSpanglerScience.com, there was not a lot that was online in terms of science experiments. It was very easy at the time to own easy science experiment or just type in science experiment. We're happy today that you can do the same thing in Google. You just type in science experiment and we do come up fairly high in the organic ranking. It's just because we dedicated fairly early on to putting this kind of content that's out there. I think that it has become trendish. I think that the SEO people have learned that this is a great way to be able to drive traffic. But when it comes to really teaching science, I think we're seeing two different camps set up. You're finding people that are just putting experiments or possibly scraping content and putting it on their website without really a good explanation or a good understanding of the science. But they're doing it to drive traffic, and to some extent it has been effective. But where that model falls down is when a kid asks the first question. You know, when somebody asks a question outside of just the procedural knowledge, then that doesn't work. I told you that I do a lot of teacher training. In fact, no student programs anymore. We just do constant teacher training. And one of the things I share with teachers as an analogy is that there's a huge difference between the Food Network and the Discovery Channel, right? Food Network, both of them great networks. Food Network teaches you how to do things. Mix this with this, and we can make it fun by adding a new personality. But at the end of the day, it's still 3 cups of flour and this, and this is what you should get. And the success is emulating that teacher on the end of the Food Network channel. That's how we determine success. Discovery Channel, just a couple channels away, way, way, way different. Don't necessarily teach you all the procedural knowledge that goes up to it, but you get to understand the thinking behind the process, and you're almost left to your own imagination of how did they get to that point. There are a few shows out there that have tried to connect those two, but the legalities of teaching people how to do things that are really cool and then kind of pushing the envelope has been difficult. So I think that it's a viable way to be able to share content, but I think that the people who are really sharing content and putting the time into giving all of the explanations and so forth have probably got to find a new model, because I don't know how you keep those people motivated and employed by just putting out that content. So I think we're going to see some new things in the next 18 months.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it's still all about the teacher. And regardless of the content, regardless of the medium, the teacher has to be essential to that. And so we agree with that for sure. So one last question here is, if you think about where science has been, science education, and where we want it to go. If you could wave a magic wand, what's one thing you'd change right now about science education across the world?
In my little world, I would start with, believe it or not, pre-K through about fifth grade. And I would make it mandatory that we take those teachers and put them back into professional development that truly teaches them how to teach science. One of the problems is, and it's my contention, I know it's a generalization, but I don't think they ever learned how to teach science because I don't think they had a great science experience either. And part of the anecdotal evidence to that is when you tell somebody you're a teacher, many times they go, "Oh, that's nice," and then you say, and they say, "What do you teach?" You go, "I teach science." Uh, you go, "Oh my gosh, I hated science when I was a kid," and that that happens. You know, people do say, "Oh, I hated that; it was so hard." Well, they didn't really hate science; they hated the experience or the lack of an experience. You'll have people say, "You know what? I loved science when I was a kid." I've never ran into somebody who said, "You know, the reason why I loved science when I was a kid is because we had this worksheet we did in fourth grade that had matching and true false and multiple." They don't say that. They always will say, "I'll never forget this lady, and she was crazy, and she stood up on the table and she kicked the eggs, and she went to the hospital, but the eggs went into the glasses, and I'll never forget the day that." And once you get that piece of the puzzle, you realize the difference between a good teacher and a great teacher. So if I could wave that magic wand, it would be to take our current pool of teachers, and these are the people that we get to see selected kind of around the country who attend our boot camps and district trainings and those kinds of things, and take them back to a point so they can understand what it felt like being that kid in the classroom. And I want them to share not only the knowledge, because Google does that. I want them to share the passion that Google can't share. I want them to share the enthusiasm for making a new discovery and changing a variable and coming up with something new, because that's viral and that's contagious. And if we change that, we would change a huge part of the way that science is taught. We wouldn't be trying to push as much content in an area. Um, we'd probably slice it a little bit differently, maybe teach less and at the same time teach more. That's, if I could have that magic wand, let me know where I can buy it, because I got a credit card and I'll just buy it online. Because if we could just do that, I think it would be good.
We manufacture those over at the ITM, so we'll ship you one.
You too. I got a friend.
Okay, good. Well, it's been great chatting with you for sure. And is there anything else you want to say or let us know about? Maybe projects that are coming up that we should all let everybody know about?
No, we'd love to have you visit stevespanglerscience.com. So that's a tremendous amount of fun for us. This is our think tank, so to speak, that was started by teachers and a way for us to be able to create not only content but products that kind of go along with that. If you like the whole Mentos and Diet Coke phenomenon, all that kind of stuff, that's kind of where all that was born. And so that's over at stevespanglerscience.com. I'd love to have you go watch The Spangler Effect on the YouTube piece. And if you really want to have some fun, go stick in Sick Science. Sick Science is a whole level of and a whole bunch of videos that we produced that is an experiment for us. It's a way to be able to get kids to think without using a character or text or anything. This is just a way to pique curiosity, because every kid says sick nowadays because everything is sick. So when science is sick, that's probably the coolest compliment you could ever have. So go check out sickscience.com. That's kind of a fun place to go as well.
That's awesome. Thanks for joining us. And
Thank you. I will call the fire department, okay?
thank you. Yeah, put that out.